Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring the history of Dabur. I've always been so fascinated by their story.
Me too.
Starting as this tiny little dispensary in the late 1800s, and eventually transforming into this multinational giant
Yeah,
that they are today.
it's incredible.
It's quite the journey, and we're going to be digging into all of it using excerpts from this book we found
Oh, wow.
that really details their journey.
Yeah.
And we're going to cover everything from pre-independence India to liberalization and beyond.
I think what's so fascinating about Dabur is how much their story mirrors India's own journey.
Right.
It's not just about surviving these huge changes. They really adapted and shaped their strategy along the way.
Okay, so let's set the scene a little bit.
Yeah.
Imagine India at the turn of the century. Colonial rule, limited resources, and Western medicine is really dominating the healthcare landscape. It's in this context that we meet Dr. S.K. Berman, Dabur's founder. This guy was a visionary physician who was completely driven by this idea of making healthcare accessible to everyone.
And it's not just about accessibility. Dr. Berman was way ahead of his time when it came to transparency and quality.
Yeah.
You know, he insisted on things like detailed ingredient lists and standardized packaging, which was unheard of back then.
Right.
He really understood that building trust was crucial.
Especially in a system that favored British companies.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It wasn't just about making medicine. It was about establishing a brand people could rely on. Those early years, though, couldn't have been easy,
Oh,
right?
absolutely not.
What were some of the biggest challenges they faced?
Imagine relying on word of mouth in a system that was completely stacked against you.
Wow.
Plus, resources were so limited, making production and distribution an uphill battle.
So what was the turning point? Was there a specific moment that changed their trajectory?
Well, the entry of Dr. Berman's son, C.L. Berman, marked a pretty significant shift. He brought this structure to the business, formalized production, expanded the product line beyond just those core medicines, and really pushed their marketing efforts.
Right, the classic father-son duo. What was unique about C.L. Berman's approach? What were some of those key decisions that set them on this path to success?
He was a pioneer in understanding the power of branding and reaching a wider audience. You think about India in the 1930s and 40s, dealing with the Great Depression, World War II, and the fight for independence.
Turbulent times.
Turbulent times, and yet C.L. Berman manages to invest in a new factory,
Wow.
focuses on these essential products that people needed, and expands their presence across India.
At a time when many businesses were struggling to survive?
That's right.
That's incredible. It takes some serious vision to do that. Not just reacting to events, but anticipating what people would need.
He was a forward thinker for sure.
So how did they not just stay afloat, but actually thrive during such turbulent times?
Well, their adaptability and resilience during this period are pretty remarkable. You know, for instance, when raw materials became scarce during the war, they didn't just give up. They found local substitutes and they adapted their packaging. Even when they had to make changes, they never compromised on quality. That commitment really resonated with people.
So they were building this reputation for reliability and quality, all while navigating some pretty intense historical events. It seems like they had a good sense of what the Indian consumer wanted, even back then.
They understood that people were looking for a blend of tradition and modernity.
Right.
They weren't just selling medicines. They were selling this promise of good health, rooted in ancient wisdom, but delivered in a way that resonated with a society that was rapidly modernizing.
Okay, so let's talk about that shift from purely medicines to incorporating consumer goods. How did they make that transition in those early years?
It was a gradual shift, driven by C.L. Berman's vision. He recognized that to really grow in a changing India, they needed to go beyond just medicines and tap into this expanding consumer market. And what better way to do that than by leveraging their Ayurvedic expertise in everyday products? Think hair oils and toothpaste.
Yeah.
Things people were already using.
It's so smart. It seems so obvious now.
Yeah.
But they were really ahead of the curve. And this was all during a time when India was going through these huge transformations.
Yeah.
You know, a mixed economy, a rising middle class, and completely new consumer behaviors.
Yeah.
How do they navigate all of that?
Their strategy was all about expansion and reaching as many people as possible.
Okay.
They established branch offices and warehouses all over India, going way beyond their initial strongholds.
Wow.
Can you imagine the logistics of that back then?
It's mind-boggling.
It was a huge undertaking.
And they didn't stop there, right?
No, they did.
They were also early adopters of new marketing techniques.
Absolutely. They were some of the first to use radio and even early television advertising to reach a wider audience.
Really?
It was a marketing revolution, running parallel to their product evolution.
They were at the forefront of so many changes. It's like they had this sixth sense for anticipating shifts in media and consumer behavior.
Their timing was impeccable. And that brings us to one of their boldest moves, the launch of Dabur Glucose D in 1984.
Oh, yeah.
Marking their entry into the beverage segment.
The iconic glucose drink. I still remember those ads. But it seems like a big leap from traditional medicines to a consumer beverage.
It was a bold move for sure. But remember, this was a time when India faced challenges like heat waves and energy depletion.
Right.
Dabur saw a chance to leverage their reputation for health and wellness and offer a solution to a very real problem.
And they did it in a way that felt so authentic to their brand. It wasn't just some random beverage. It was positioned as this energy drink rooted in the goodness of glucose, drawing on that Ayurvedic expertise.
Exactly. They created a product that was both familiar and modern, aligning perfectly with their image as this trusted source of health and well-being.
So by the late 1980s, they had expanded their product line, established this national presence, and even ventured into new markets. But then came the elephant in the room, liberalization in the 1990s. India's economic landscape changed drastically.
It did. It really did.
Opening up to this wave of multinational competition. How did Dabur handle this seismic shift?
They didn't just handle it. They embrace it.
Okay.
Instead of panicking. They saw liberalization as an opportunity to level up and become a truly global player. And in 1994, they made a very bold decision. They went public.
Well, hold on. Going public is a huge step for any company.
Yeah.
But especially for a family-run business like Dabur.
It's true.
What was the reasoning behind that?
It was a strategic masterstroke. They understood that to compete on a global scale, they needed access to capital.
Right.
And going public was the most efficient way to get it. It was a risky move, no doubt, but they had a plan.
So they were playing the long game, thinking strategically, when others might have been reacting emotionally to these big changes.
It takes courage to do that.
It does. But didn't this decision come with its own risks? Were there concerns about losing control of their family legacy?
Of course those concerns always exist when a family business goes public. But the Berman family approached this transition with this incredible sense of balance. They knew they needed to evolve to survive in this new landscape.
Okay, but going public is one thing.
Yeah.
How did they actually navigate the complexities of a liberalized market?
Yeah.
We're talking intense competition, constantly changing consumer demands, and a whole new set of rules to follow.
They did it by staying focused. They prioritized categories where they had a clear advantage: healthcare, personal care, and natural foods. It was about playing to their strengths and not trying to be everything to everyone.
It's a valuable lesson. It's easy to get distracted by all the possibilities, but sometimes staying focused on what you do best is the key to success.
They were laser focused on their core strengths.
Yeah.
While simultaneously expanding strategically in both domestic and international markets.
So they were playing offense and defense
They were.
at the same time. This strategic repositioning must have paid off.
Absolutely. By the end of the 1990s, they had solidified their position as a major player in the Indian consumer goods market.
Yeah.
And they weren't just a national brand anymore. They had established a strong international presence as well.
Wow, that's impressive. Their story is full of these bold moves and strategic decisions. And it's clear they weren't afraid to adapt and embrace change. But their journey doesn't end there, does it?
Not even close. We still have their journey into the 21st century to explore. Their focus on power brands, their deeper penetration into rural markets, and their continued international expansion.
Okay.
And they did all of this while remaining a family-run business.
We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
But there's clearly so much more to this story. We're going to have to pause our deep dive here for now. But don't worry, we'll be back soon with part 2 to uncover the rest of Dabur's incredible journey.
In the meantime, think about this. How did Dabur manage to maintain their commitment to Ayurvedic principles while undergoing such massive transformations?
That's a good question.
It's a question that will be central to our exploration in the next part.
Okay, stay tuned, everyone. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into Dabur's incredible journey. Welcome back, everyone. Last time we left off with Dabur poised for growth in the 21st century, ready to take on new markets while holding on to their heritage. It's a fascinating balancing act.
What strikes me is their consistent ability to adapt. They entered the 2000s with India's economy booming, globalization in full swing, and facing even fiercer competition from multinational companies. Their response doubled down on what they did best, Ayurvedic-based products, but with a refined strategy.
So what did that look like in practice? How did they stand out in this increasingly crowded marketplace?
They got strategic. They shifted their focus to what they call power brands. Think Chaiwan Prash Vatika hair oil and real fruit juices. By concentrating resources on these already strong performers, they could achieve deeper market penetration and really boost brand recognition.
It's like focusing a laser instead of scattering a flashlight beam. But they weren't just focused on the urban consumer, right? We talked about their push into rural markets as well. Tell me more about that.
It was a brilliant move while the urban landscape was getting super competitive. They recognized the massive potential of rural India. Remember, this is a company deeply rooted in traditional wisdom, something that resonates strongly in those communities.
Right. But reaching rural consumers comes with its own set of challenges. Logistically, it's much more difficult. And then there are the diverse preferences and cultural nuances to consider. How did Dabur tackle all of that?
They got creative. They set up a multi-tiered distribution network with sub-distributors in smaller towns and even deployed mobile units to reach remote villages. Picture these vans packed with Dabur products traveling across the countryside, bringing their brand right to people's doorsteps.
That's incredible. It goes beyond just selling. It's about building trust and forming a connection with those communities.
Exactly. And they tailored their marketing to match visuals, local languages, even word of mouth. They used it all to connect with rural consumers on their terms.
So they're conquering urban markets with these power brands, building a strong presence in rural India. Talk about a multi-pronged attack, but we can't forget about their global ambitions. How did their international expansion play out in the 2000s?
Their approach got much more targeted and sophisticated. They actually categorized markets into 3 tiers. The core development markets got heavy investment, then expansion markets with focused growth initiatives, and lastly, trading markets served mostly through exports.
So a much more strategic approach. Instead of trying to be everywhere at once, which regions were they focused on?
The Middle East remained a stronghold, building on their success from the 1990s, but they also saw huge potential in North Africa, with Egypt becoming a key market.
Interesting choices. What drew them to those regions?
In the Middle East, they had the advantage of a large Indian diaspora already familiar with Dabur, but they also saw cultural affinity for natural products among the Arab population.
Tapping into that shared appreciation for tradition and Egypt. What was the appeal there?
Egypt was a chance to really test their adaptability. They had to tailor their products marketing, even their organizational structure, to fit the local market.
A real test of their global capabilities did they pass?
With flying colors, by the late 2000s, Egypt was their second largest international market, right behind the UAE.
That's a huge accomplishment. They were strengthening power brands, expanding into rural India, and strategically growing internationally. That's a lot to manage. How did their internal structure evolve to keep up with this massive growth?
They knew their organizational structure needed a serious upgrade. The family recognized that to handle this level of complexity, they needed to bring in professional management.
So they gave up control.
Not exactly. The Berman family understood the importance of their legacy and their role in guiding the company. They transitioned to more of a governance role, providing strategic oversight through the board, while empowering professional executives to run day-to-day operations.
Wow, that's a delicate balancing act. Maintaining family stewardship while embracing professional management. How did they make that work?
They got very intentional about it. They put formal governance structures in place, like a family council and a board with independent directors. They also developed solid systems for financial planning, performance management, and developing their talent pool.
So they proactively created a framework to help the company flourish while keeping their core values intact and ensuring long-term sustainability. It sounds like this family really thought ahead.
It's true. They didn't just react to events. They actively shaped their own evolution. They anticipated the challenges of a globalized market and adapted their internal structures to stay ahead.
I'm seeing a recurring theme here. Proactive adaptation. It's like they have this built-in radar for change.
It's one of the most fascinating things about Dabur, don't you think? They don't shy away from change. They embrace it as an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely. But let's shift gears and talk about their product portfolio. They couldn't just rely on their traditional offerings during this period of rapid expansion, right?
They had to innovate, but they did it in a way that remained true to their Ayurvedic roots. They invested heavily in research and development, focusing on improving existing products, finding new applications for traditional ingredients, and scientifically validating their claims.
So they were marrying ancient wisdom with modern science. I love that.
They recognized that in a global market, they needed to back up their traditional knowledge with scientific evidence. Consumers wanted proof, not just claims, and Dabur understood that.
That makes sense. People are more discerning than ever. So what were some of the specific outcomes of this approach?
Well, look at their flagship product, Chayawan Prash. They gave it a modern makeover, refining the formulation to appeal to contemporary tastes while highlighting its immunity-boosting properties. It was a brilliant move, especially as consumers became increasingly health-conscious.
It's so clever they took a traditional product and repositioned it for a modern audience without sacrificing its authenticity.
Exactly, and they also made significant strides in their food category, expanding the real fruit juice line and even acquiring another juice brand.
So they were diversifying within their core areas of expertise, using their natural and Ayurvedic positioning to tap into new markets and consumer preferences. It sounds like a winning strategy.
It was, and this innovation wasn't limited to just formulations. They also recognized the power of packaging and invested in that too.
You're right, packaging is so much more than just a container these days. It's a crucial part of the brand experience.
They understood that they introduced premium packaging for their higher-end products using sophisticated designs and materials to communicate quality and exclusivity. And they even started exploring sustainable packaging options, showing a growing awareness of environmental concerns.
They're evolving on so many levels: product innovation, marketing sophistication, organizational restructuring, and even incorporating sustainability. It's impressive.
It's a remarkable story of transformation. And remember, they achieved all of this while staying true to their core values, their Ayurvedic heritage, family stewardship, and commitment to quality and authenticity.
It's inspiring to see a company grow without losing sight of what makes them unique. But I'm curious, did they face any setbacks during this period of rapid growth and expansion? It couldn't have all been easy.
Of course, they had their share of challenges. The 2008 global financial crisis, for example, really put their resilience to the test. But they navigated those difficult times with their characteristic mix of prudence and adaptability.
So what was their secret? How did they weather those storms and come out stronger?
Their conservative financial approach played a key role. They had maintained a strong balance sheet and avoided taking on excessive debt, which gave them a cushion to fall back on during those uncertain times.
So it was a combination of strategic foresight and financial prudence. I'm sensing a pattern here.
Their ability to balance seemingly opposing forces, tradition and modernity, family values and professional management, financial prudence and strategic boldness, that's what sets Dabur apart. It's what's allowed them to thrive for over a century through countless challenges and transformations.
It's a story of balance, isn't it? Finding that sweet spot between seemingly opposite forces.
Exactly, and we'll see even more of that as we move into the 2010s and beyond.
Okay, we've explored the early 2000s, a time of significant growth and strategic evolution for Dabur. They've clearly become a global force while holding on to their roots. I'm eager to hear about their recent journey.
That's where we'll pick up in a year. Part 3 of our deep dive will explore how they navigated the ever-changing landscape of the past decade, including their response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I can't wait. Before we go, I have to ask, what has stood out to you the most in our exploration of Dabur's journey so far?
What fascinates me is their unwavering commitment to their Ayurvedic heritage. It's not just a marketing tactic, it's interwoven into their company culture. It informs their decisions and shapes their approach to business.
I agree. It's incredible to see a company achieve global success without compromising its core values.
It makes you wonder how many other companies can claim such a legacy, and what can we learn from their approach, especially in a world that's constantly changing.
Great questions to ponder. We'll delve deeper into those when we return for our final part. See you soon, everyone. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Dabur. We've journeyed from their humble beginnings to their emergence as this global player.
And now we find them at the dawn of the 2010s. A decade marked by, tech advancements,
Right.
evolving consumer trends, and of course, the unexpected shock of a global pandemic.
Yeah, it was a turbulent time for sure. So let's dive into Dabur's recent history. What were some of those key trends they had to navigate?
Well, the rise of e-commerce and digital marketing was a huge game changer.
Right.
Suddenly, how consumers discovered and interacted with brands was completely different.
Right. It was a whole new ballgame. And along with that came this growing demand for sustainability, both in terms of the products themselves and the company's environmental practices.
Consumers were becoming much more discerning, holding companies accountable for their impact on the world.
Right.
They weren't just buying products. They were buying into values.
And then the COVID-19 pandemic hit, disrupting everything. Supply chains went haywire, Consumer priorities shifted overnight, and companies had to scramble to adapt. How did Dabur handle all of this?
They did what they've always done. They adapted and they innovated.
Okay.
They leveraged those existing strengths
Okay.
while embracing those new technologies and trends you mentioned.
Give me some specifics. How did they approach this digital revolution? Did they just jump on the social media bandwagon like everyone else?
They went beyond simply creating a social media presence.
Okay.
They developed a comprehensive digital marketing strategy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think content creation, influencer collaborations, and performance marketing. They used these tools strategically to engage with consumers in a more personalized and interactive way.
So it's about using digital tools thoughtfully,
Mhm.
not just chasing trends.
I think so.
And this wasn't just limited to marketing, right? They also embraced digitization
Yeah.
in their supply chain management.
Absolutely. They invested in digital inventory management systems, used predictive analytics to forecast demand, and implemented real-time visibility tools. This allowed them to really optimize their operations, reduce inefficiencies, and anticipate disruptions.
It sounds like they were using technology not just to keep up, but to get ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
What about that growing demand for sustainability? How do they address that?
They took it very seriously. The sustainability wasn't just a marketing buzzword for them.
Right.
They integrated it into their core business practices. They really focused on reducing their environmental impact throughout their operations, from water and energy conservation to packaging and sourcing.
Okay, but what does that look like in practice? What specific actions did they take?
Well, they implemented water conservation programs at their facilities,
Yeah.
installed solar panels to generate clean energy, and even started incorporating recycled content into their packaging. They were taking a holistic approach, addressing multiple facets of their operations.
So a comprehensive
Yeah.
and genuine commitment to sustainability. Okay, and how did they handle the COVID-19 pandemic? That must have been a real stress test for them.
It was a challenge for sure, but in many ways, their prior investments in digitization and supply chain optimization really paid off. They were able to transition smoothly to remote work and e-commerce. Their distributed manufacturing network also provided a level of resilience, allowing them to adapt to disruptions more easily.
So they were better prepared than many companies
Yeah,
because of decisions they'd made years earlier.
I think that's right. And they also adapted their product portfolio to meet the needs of the moment, focusing on products that supported immunity and hygiene. It was a smart response to a rapidly changing situation.
It's like they had a playbook ready for a crisis they couldn't have predicted.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
So after navigating all of these recent challenges, where does Dabur stand today? How are they performing in this ever-evolving global landscape?
Yeah, they're thriving. They continue to show consistent financial growth. They're expanding their global reach, and they're earning recognition for their innovation and sustainability efforts. And incredibly, they've achieved all of this while remaining a family-led company.
It's an incredible story of resilience and adaptation. As we wrap up our deep dive into Dabur's world, what are the key takeaways you think listeners should remember? What's resonating with you the most?
For me, it's the power of long-term thinking.
Yeah.
And the willingness to embrace change.
Right.
Dabur has consistently anticipated shifts in the market and adapted their strategies, whether it was recognizing the importance of branding in the early 20th century or going digital in the 21st.
That's a great point. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly.
What about their commitment to their Ayurvedic heritage?
That's equally important. They've shown that heritage can be a really powerful asset in a modern world. It's not about clinging to the past. It's about leveraging your unique history and values to stand out and connect with consumers on a deeper level.
It's about authenticity, isn't it? Staying true to who you are, while evolving to meet the demands of a changing world.
Exactly. Dabur's story is a testament to the idea that you can achieve global success without sacrificing your roots.
It's been a fascinating journey exploring the history and evolution of Dabur, and I hope our listeners are walking away with a sense of inspiration and a few valuable insights they can apply to their own lives and endeavors.
It's a story that shows what's possible when you combine vision, adaptability, and a deep respect for your heritage.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.